Hello, in this week's episode, we're going to be doing a Casually Criterion review for The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. But before that, we're going to be talking about Watchmen, Episode 4, Mandalorian, Disney+, and an advanced screening of Martin Scorsese's The Irishman.
And also Fleabag, don't forget.
Oh!
Hello and welcome to the Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinks. With me as always is Mike. How are you doing today, sir?
Well, I guess I'm going to stop it here because I don't want to do that and I can't sing. But I'm doing well, thank you. That was beautiful, Chris.
Also with us is Justin. Oh. How are you?
It's going to cut me off, I guess.
Don't worry, I'll back you up, Mike. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. I shan't sing. No one wants that.
All right, if you guys aren't going to sing, I won't either. Leave me to dry, guys. I see how it is.
Yeah. Well, you threw it at us really quickly without much warning.
Well, I thought
you
we
really
agreed
brought this on yourself.
Yeah. We talked about it last week.
Oh, we agreed on it? Okay. Yeah. If this is your first time listening to the show, you've stumbled into a Casually Criterion episode. That is a Criterion Collection focused episode that we do every other week where we review a film from, you guessed it, the Criterion Collection that is picked by the listeners. Before we get into the main review, we'll be doing our usual News on the March section where we talk about recent news and things that we've been watching. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can still listen. And then we will move into our Casually Criterion review for The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. Spine number 716. I'm pronouncing it differently this week.
Oh, than you did last week?
Yeah. Last week it was Cherbourg, but then I watched the movie.
That helps, doesn't it? Sometimes.
It does. Now I feel like a fool. Guys, in honor of The Umbrellas of Cherbourg and Chris's wonderful intro,
thank you.
I had a question for you guys. What moment in your lifetime do you wish someone would sing information to you? It could be doctors when you're getting bad news, teachers when you failed, cops when you're getting a ticket. You know, what would you prefer someone sing at you or sing to you in your lifetime to make it easier to swallow?
I think I'm going to have to go, not exactly what you said, but like with a judge. So like if a judge, when he's sentencing you to whatever crime you've committed, you know, he should have to sing that to you. And, you know, like, you're getting a life sentence. We'll never see you again.
Yeah. That's a good one. What about you, Justin?
Oh, can I just answer none? Because I really have a thing where I don't like when people sing to me. I'm never more uncomfortable than if people are singing to me.
But you go to a lot of concerts. So what if you're like in the front row and like the singer like gets up in your face? Do you stop having a good time?
Yeah.
like if if there's like recording of like a concert footage and all that, like the footage will be of you like rocking out and jumping up and down. But then as soon as the singer pays you any attention, you just like get really straight faced and look down.
Yeah, probably. like I've been at concerts with like friends, and you know, if they're like singing the song and then they like make eye contact with me, or like it, you know, like someone's looking at you and singing, like I get really uncomfortable and I don't know what to do. Like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever seen on like television or film is from Breaking Bad when is it Skylar? Is that her name?
Yes. Oh my God, that scene sucks. She
sings the "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" thing to somebody.
Yeah, it's very cringy.
Even just seeing that happen makes my skin crawl. But I don't know how to handle people singing at me, so any situation would be terrible for me.
Yeah. You certainly wouldn't make it in this town.
No, this was like the scariest movie I've ever seen.
It's a horror movie to you.
Yeah. So that's my answer. None situation ever.
I like it.
Yeah. What's your answer, Mike?
I would say, I think I mentioned it earlier in the examples. I think doctors. If you're going to tell me something bad, give me some bad news. I think if I'm thinking about their singing, it'll take the edge off just a little bit, I guess.
That's like the Patch Adams philosophy.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, fair enough. And as you mentioned earlier, Mike, we have our listeners vote in the Criterion polls to pick the Criterion Collection film we do every other week. If you want to vote in the polls and follow along, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. If you want to send us questions about the movies we're reviewing each week or topics to discuss, you can send them to those social media accounts. You can also email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com. And then, of course, if you like the show and you haven't done so, go to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. Let other people know the show's great so that they'll find it and maybe be interested in listening.
That's right. Please and thank you.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you haven't done so, hit the subscribe button in whatever platform you're listening to us on.
Yeah.
We'll give you $1 when you do.
Oh. Email Chris.
Chris will give you $1.
Yeah, and you guys can work that out.
And he'll send you a singing thank you.
That's right.
Which is better than $1.
In fact, it'll be a recorded video message, personalized to you.
Whoa.
JK, probably none of those things will happen, but you'll get our episodes as soon as they come out into your feed automatically, which is
really
that's handy.
That's like the equivalent of us paying you money because it's so valuable.
Yes.
All right. Guys, with that, I say we have a jam-packed show, so what do you say we go ahead and just move into news on the march?
All about it. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
News on the march!
All right, Justin. I believe you have had the most eventful stretch of time since the last time the listeners had a chance to catch up with you. So why don't you go ahead and tell everyone what you've been up to?
Sure, yeah. So I maybe haven't had the most eventful in the sense that I've watched the most things, but the thing I did watch was quite long. So maybe I did end up watching the most if you get it down to like minutes.
Yeah, it's like 3 umbrellas of Cherbourg.
I don't know, man. I watched quite a bit, but maybe so. I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. I'm saying for the jokes. It's probably not genuine.
No, it's not a joke. It's not funny. I'm just kidding. It is
okay.
funny.
I'm sorry.
I'm just joking. It is funny. I ruined it.
It's okay. Anyways, what I did see was The Irishman on the big screen.
Yeah. I'm jealous about this, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes, this is why I wanted to talk about it, because I wanted to hear the jealousy in your voices.
Yeah.
Because we text about it, but, I don't get that satisfaction.
Yeah. Because we purposely don't give it to you.
I know.
Yeah,
We know you're looking for it.
I could care less. You saw this movie.
Yeah.
I don't
No
care.
big deal. Who cares about this movie?
Let's skip it.
Yeah,
Hurry up.
It's whatever. But
Martin Scorsese says Marvel movies aren't even cinema.
Yeah.
Who cares about him? Just kidding. Keep going.
I will. So I saw this film in Austin. I was there for the weekend, and before I came back, I met up with friend and listener of the show at Real Matt Ward, who I think he guested on an episode. He sends in questions sometimes, so you might recognize that name if you're a longtime listener. But we met up and we went and saw The Irishman at an Alamo Drafthouse, and neither of us had to go to the bathroom at any point during the movie.
Whoa.
Yeah. Did you not drink anything beforehand?
I did. Well, we had lunch beforehand, and I foolishly drank 2 glasses of soda.
That is
But
foolish.
I made myself go to the bathroom as soon as we got in the theater, and then went again. I made myself go a second time before the movie started.
Smart.
Yeah, because the movie is like 3.5 hours long. I don't know if anyone knows that.
No
most
intermission?
people listening to this do. No intermission. It is just straight through 3.5 hours. But I don't want to talk a whole lot about like the plot or giving away anything, because I know that neither of you guys have seen it, and both of you are kind of in the state of you don't know very much about the film, and you kind of want to keep it that way. Correct?
Yeah. Correct. I just found out who it's about. Like yesterday.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't even know who it was about.
Wow. Good job, Mike.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, I guess technically I found out who it was about yesterday too.
Yeah.
when I watched it.
I know if I'd gotten a chance to see it yesterday, I would know nothing.
Yeah. But what I will say is the movie had a lot to live up to, I think, just because of all the stuff going on with it being this like Netflix movie, the next, Martin Scorsese film with like a pretty stellar, intriguing cast, which I think we all know the main cast who's in it, right?
De Niro, Pacino, and
Pesci.
Pesci, right?
Yes. So a reuniting of Scorsese with all three of those actors in the same film. So it, it had a lot of hype. There is, of course, the Scorsese calling Marvel not cinema. So he kind of, has to show up Marvel a little bit, I think, with this film. Like if it came out and it wasn't that great, he probably wouldn't care. But, some people would. But it just had a lot to live up to. A lot of like hype going on. And I will just say, to me, it didn't disappoint. Like I have not stopped thinking about the movie since I got done watching it. And it has only grown on me since I walked out of the theater. And I think that it's going to end up being like one of Scorsese's, top films, I think.
Oh, wow.
I mean, he's got a lot of top films. Like that's not like a lone category that it's in. I just think.
Can you imagine like when people like talk about Martin Scorsese 20 years from now, would like The Irishman be in like the top 5 that they mention of like highlighting the highlights of his career?
Top 5. That may be tough.
Yeah, right. He's got a lot of good ones.
He's got a strong top 5, I think, prior to Irishman. And there's certain things about this one I think that you might have to like pick this and a couple of other films that are similar. Mm-hmm. So it may end up on the chopping block in those conversations for that reason.
Sure.
But I haven't seen a movie from him in a while like that I felt like this. Like it's 3.5 hours, but like it just flew by and it was totally watchable. It didn't feel like 3.5 hours to me. And I was just very, very impressed. And I recommend seeing it on the big screen if you can. But if you can't, I think it'll probably be just fine. Because I've watched plenty of other Martin Scorsese movies not on the big screen, and they were great. Yeah, watching them at home.
I feel like most people will not be able to because, like we mentioned earlier, Chris and I have been looking for showtimes, and there's just nothing. There's just simply nothing. Like, if you go to their official website and check all the showtimes in Texas, it's not impressive. So
yeah, I know it's opening up in more places this weekend.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
We'll see. And yeah, the last thing I'll say about it, I think it's cinema.
Yeah?
It gets your stamp of approval?
It's cinema.
Good to know. Mm-hmm. The jury was out, now it's not.
That's right. Officially, now you know. All right. And speaking of things being cinema or not being cinema, or, whatever you want, Mike, what's on your mind?
I guess not cinema, technically. Because what's on my mind are TV shows.
That's what I was going for. I just kind of muddled it up.
I got it. I picked it up. Ran with it.
Good.
I think it worked out. I think it was successful. I think it was a good...
All right, we'll cut out the part where I questioned myself then.
So a lot going on this week. Like you, I don't want to get too much into detail because we still got to talk about Watchmen here in a minute, episode 4, and then, of course, the movie. But this is the 12th as we're recording this. Which means, as of today, Disney Plus has hit the scene. And I have watched the first episode of The Mandalorian. Also, that Jeff Goldblum show where he asks questions about things. I forget the name of it. But yeah, have either of you guys watched this yet?
Yeah, I watched The Mandalorian last night.
I have not, so you have to be spoiler-free.
Tiptoe? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I watched it last night technically as well, even though it should have launched today because Roku put out Disney Plus a little early. And a few
Thanks, Roku.
Yeah, thanks, Roku. But yeah, I really enjoyed the show. I think it's actually pretty cool. It feels like a live-action Star Wars, like, expanded universe cartoon.
Yeah, I was reminded of, what was the Genndy Tartakovsky? He did that Clone Wars before... George Lucas did his Clone Wars. There's like 2D animated. It kind of reminded me a little bit of that.
Yeah, I really loved
very like the Samurai Jack type feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Clone Wars, the actual series Clone Wars, not the 2D animated one you were talking about, one of the co-creators who worked with George Lucas on Clone Wars, Dave Filoni, this is his first live action thing he's directed.
Yeah. That might be why it feels that way, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, and this guy did Rebels cartoon as well, so this guy knows Star Wars better than everyone else besides George Lucas, you know? So, he's kind of the mentor that has kind of taken the reins in Lucasfilm, and they kind of run things by Dave Filoni to make sure it feels like Star Wars, because that guy just kind of gets it. But anyway, it's an impressive visually, the first episode, but I think the first episode, it's a little too bare bones to tell if this is going to be a successful overall show. But what's on the screen in the first episode, I thoroughly enjoyed. And it feels like original trilogy era. I think when it's all said and done, it'll make the sequel trilogy a little better by providing just more context for what took place between in the galaxy and what was going on with other planets and stuff. So anyways, I'll keep it brief and see what Chris thinks. But I enjoyed it, and the next episode drops like Friday, like in 3 days.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting,
Yeah, so I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you. As I was watching the show, I wasn't sure exactly what it was trying to be. There's not enough to go on as you're watching it, because you're right, it is very bare bones, not a lot of characters, not a lot of... It's just like a man on a mission, and he's sent on this mission, right?
Well, but it's very much like a Western, right? Like the Virginian, the Mandalorian.
Yeah. And I don't think this is a spoiler to say, but the last 5 minutes, I realized what the show was, and I got very excited about this show. I don't know if you feel the same way, Mike, but I all of a sudden, it clicked, and I actually watched it again immediately because I was like, oh, okay, yeah, now I got context here, and now I'm excited to see what this is. So
yeah, and there's actually a surprisingly large amount of subtle character building that you don't realize is character building in the first episode until you look back on it, and you're like, oh, okay.
Very subtle, yeah.
Very subtle,
and actions and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah.
As opposed to dialogue and stuff like that. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I'm excited for Friday to watch the next one. So it's definitely in my rotation of TV shows I watch.
Yeah, for real.
It looked great. That's the other thing. I believe that this could have played in the theater and it would have looked amazing. All those special effects were just amazing and would really work well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think part of that is because he's using a new kind of way of doing things where he can bring things up in the video game engine, Unreal Engine.
Yeah, I saw that logo in the...
Yeah. And so he can make backgrounds and things like that on the fly really quickly so they can kind of see what the finished product is going to look like, and it helps make this a little cheaper than traditionally, although still having a massive budget.
Yeah, it's that Jon Favreau Lion King stuff. I feel like maybe some of the Lion King lessons that he learned are being shown here.
Yeah. Anyway, it looks great. The only other thing I really wanted to talk about was I watched 2 seasons of Fleabag because you guys told me to.
Yeah. And that's all you could watch.
That's all I could watch. And they are short. And I will say that the show did not hook me for the first half of the first season.
Mm-hmm.
And then I liked it. I liked the way the first season ended. And then I was disappointed there was a second season because I thought,
yeah,
what else can you do?
Right.
We're done. We're done with her. I'm done with her. I don't want to see any more from this girl. And then the second season hits the ground running, and now I want a third.
Yeah, right?
Like if she visits this character 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, I would love that. I would be completely open to that. I cannot wait to see how she grows and changes. And that's the beautiful part, I think, about this show is what makes season 2 work is because you feel like she did change from season 1. You feel like she learned something about herself and is actively trying to be a better person.
Yeah, she got better,
Yeah, that's an admirable kind of story to watch. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It makes you feel good.
Yeah,
she still has those tendencies, but she's definitely a better person, and watching her struggle to be that good person consistently is really great too.
Yeah, there's definitely, but I think part of the struggle with the first season is getting on board with the character and wanting to spend this time with her. And
the things that she thought were funny, I didn't think were funny.
right. And I think where she is in the second season when it starts, and maybe that's because I've spent time with her in the first season, but we start that second season and I'm already with her. And for me, like I did like the first season. I thought it was really good by the end of it. But that second season for me just like was firing on all cylinders. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't have been more impressed with it. Just like with like the priest, the relationship with him, the way that all played out just kept me like riveted. Like I couldn't stop watching.
Yeah, actually, we watched season 1 over 3 days, and we watched season 2 in 1 day.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That makes perfect sense. That's exactly. I ended up spreading season 2 out over 2 nights, 3 episodes each night. But they were back to back. Like the next night, I was like, we gotta get back to it.
yeah,
So
we rushed through dinner.
yeah. So I'm glad that you came around on it though, because I was a little concerned, because Chris and I did sell you on Fleabag, and you had watched the first couple episodes and had texted us and were like, yeah, you know what? I don't think I dig this, or I'm not feeling it, or something. You said something to that effect, and I was like, uh-oh.
Yeah, I was just like, well, I didn't think it was very good based on episode 1 only, I think was my thing. But I had faith, because everyone says it's awesome, that it would get better, and luckily it did. So
Yeah, cool. I'm happy
first
to hear
impressions aren't everything, guys.
it. That's right. If you don't like something, just keep doing it.
That's right. And eventually, you won't care. That's how the radio makes all their money. And convinces you that anything on there is good.
Yep. That's how the broccoli industry keeps going.
It's not really healthy.
No.
Anyway, okay.
I don't know.
That's all I wanted to go. I think we need to go ahead and move on into our discussion of Watchmen episode 4. I'm going to go ahead and say right off the bat, if you haven't seen episodes 1 through 3, we're going to go ahead and just talk about episode 4. So you're going to get spoiled on stuff. If you have not seen The Watchmen or don't care about The Watchmen, then use your trusty app where you're listening to this, and the show notes will tell you exactly where to click to move into our review of Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
That's right. So let's get spoilery about Watchmen, episode 4.
Let's do it. That was it. You're in spoiler town.
Yeah.
Population 3.
Okay, so Chris, why don't you get us started on this? What do you think of episode 4?
All right. This episode was really, really weird. Quite possibly one of the weirdest things I've ever seen on TV. It was so wacky. Like, it's like every 10 minutes of this episode, you're like, what? What's happening here? Just so much weird, wacky stuff happening, and surprises and things that they don't explain in this episode. I do think ultimately this is probably the weakest episode of the season so far. It doesn't mean it's a bad episode, but I just think that it is one of the weaker ones. I think we just entered into the second act here too. It's like a 9-episode season, so the first 3. So they're kind of resetting in a way, and they're doing more exposition in this one. Is one of the things you were mentioning too, Mike. But this, I will
Off air, I was mentioning. I haven't mentioned it yet. Listeners,
well, that's true.
Don't
Off
worry.
air. One of the things I would recommend this episode. I think, okay, if you've watched the first 3 episodes of this show and you're on the fence, this episode is either going to like sell you on the rest of the season and you'll just keep watching, or it's going to break you, I think. Like where you're like, look, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I'm out, But I recommend watching this episode just for the weirdness in here. Like there's crazy babies in a lake. There's slippery guys in condom suits, this like there's twists, like Will Reeves can walk,
That's not really that much of a twist to that. That was pretty obvious.
Yeah,
Right.
Still a twist.
Did he
but,
walk, or did he just stand?
he walked around. Yeah.
Okay.
He walked a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing I want to talk about is the opening of the sequence too, because I think the opening was really well done, with the 2 parents that can't conceive a child, and then we get the introduction to Lady True and how she negotiates with them. I thought that was really well done. How'd you guys feel about the opening sequence? There's also like Superman references in there too.
I was actually a little concerned during this opening sequence because I thought there were some things that weren't very good about it. And I think most of that I place on the writing. And I just maybe a little bit of the acting of the actress who plays Lady True. I'm not sure if that's her fault or if it's just weird writing, but some things just struck me as false and felt like writing to me. Some of her kind of tough talking.
I think it's her voice. I think it's the performance, personally speaking, with that character. Because I felt something similar. I don't think I'm as down on it as you are, but the performance felt a little like theatrical, I guess.
Yeah, like there were just certain things where she's like, "Now don't interrupt
Monologue-y.
me," and I don't know. It just felt weird, and maybe it's just a strong choice for like a character who I'm just meeting for the first time. But it felt a little cliched, I think, a little bit, and the performance felt a little cliched. Like I've seen something similar before. That said, the content and like the concept of that, like once it got kind of past her talking for a while and she reveals the baby, I was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
This is interesting. So I was into it by the end, but there was this time where I was a little concerned.
Yeah, I think this is an episode of pretty high highs. I think Adrian Veidt's story, Jeremy Irons, with like the fetuses in the lake and his like his microwave machine to make them full grown or whatever it is. Like that's all fascinating. That's like top tier of what this show has been so far. Mm-hmm. I didn't even mind Lady True, that opening scene so much. I was kind of on board for that, even though I thought her performance was a little much, like a little, like not quite the same vibe as like everyone else's performances so far. Mm-hmm. But I think my main concern with this show is I kind of felt it a little bit in the last episode, but I was so high on the last episode that I didn't really care. But this show is really clunky at exposition. First of all, the Redfordations Museum is a plot device that needs to end.
Yeah,
because that is badly put together. Like she goes there and gets like these 3D representations of like these people that died long before cameras that could do anything like that. You know what I mean? Like she gets all this information that's exactly perfect to her. Like they call her to give her information. Like it just seems way too convenient to be believable. I can't suspend my disbelief if she goes back there one more time to get an important bit of information about her family and her heritage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that's it, and that's why it was there, was just to like to make this connection. But
yeah,
I struggled to see what that told us that we didn't already know.
Exactly. It was pointless and it was convenient, and that's the worst part about it. Is like it caused my disbelief to not be suspended for that whole scene, and then a few minutes after that, and it didn't add anything. We already knew that it was his, he could have just told her, I'm your grandpa or something. Like, I don't know.
Well, she found out who her great-grandparents were in that because that's what she found.
She could have done that through Google. That would have been better. Just Google it at home. Anyway. And then the other scene that I don't know if you guys even registered it as like bad, but it felt really clunky. And that's the scene where this character that exists for exposition, Petey, like, Laurie's being Laurie, and Angela's like, why are you so mean or whatever? And then she's like, why don't you tell him or tell her about my trauma, Petey? And so, of all the things that he could say that could be considered traumatic in her life, he chooses one sentence that says, her dad tried to rape her mom. Like, not who her parents were, what her past is, etc. No more. Like, it's just like, that is just like an enticing line for the audience who hasn't read the novel, right? So it's just like it's clunky. Like it's.
That was certainly, for those people that haven't read the novel, this is what's going on, type
like,
of thing.
But I mean, but why choose like tell her about my trauma? Oh, well.
Where do I start?
Yeah. Where do I start? You have so much like of an interesting life, and then like give us the highlights and like that, make it seem like he's really like understands, that she's been through a lot or whatever, but like don't say like the thing that you weren't alive to even experience is your trauma. And it's like, it just seemed like a really perfectly chosen line. It just rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm being overly harsh, but because I do like the episode. It's just I mean, I don't know. I mean, am I being unfair?
I mean, I think it doesn't bother me as much as it does you, but as soon as you said exposition, I knew what you were talking about. If that, because
Well, I mean, I guess you knew what I was talking about. So that means whenever you were watching it, you felt like a similar, like,
yeah. I mean, I'm like, well, yeah, for sure. I'm not.
okay.
Yeah, it's certainly the weakest episode, I think, and partially that's because of the exposition, and also for me, it's like the weirdness of this episode. Like a lot of stuff pops up and there's no answers in this episode for anything, like even for as the characters are progressing,
Right. I think this episode feels like an episode that's designed to just give us questions and make us wonder. And, it gives me those like Lost vibes.
Yeah.
Where we're just building mystery and building mystery. And
That's funny because like I have similar complaints about this episode that I have about Lost beginning in season 3, which is like when characters in the opportunity to like have good conversations, they ask stupid questions or like say dialogue to create more mystery and questions. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they know audiences are watching them and that they need to like hook you, right? Like that's the exact same thing. Like I remember I felt that in season 3 of Lost quite a bit, where it was like no one would ask the right questions. Everyone would always just say like the most mysterious thing possible. Yeah, I felt that a lot in this episode, and I think that really rubs me the wrong way in mystery shows. Anyway, I'm still on board. I'm definitely going to finish the season, and it's still better than most things on TV. So
yeah, definitely agree.
It's just like I feel like it doesn't trust the audience as much in this episode as it did in the pilot.
I like to be teased, essentially. Like you dole out a little bit of information each time. You get a couple of answers, and maybe you get a new question, but I don't mind that. And I guess that's why I like Lost and Damon Lindelof and The Leftovers and stuff like that. And the other thing is, as long as there's some sort of emotional satisfaction by the ending, But I do want to ask you guys, what's up with Lube Man? Or, like the condom guy or whatever. Do you think that's PD himself? Like, do you think, because it was like a tall, skinny guy, right?
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't think about that.
I'm not prepared to speculate on that.
Yeah. I just thought it was real funny.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It was really funny. Just real quick, like as far as theories go, Adrian Veidt, is he on the moon? Or have you guys revised your theories on that since last week?
I mean, I think he's in some like created place by Dr. Manhattan, because whenever they are catapulting the bodies of the other clones that he had murdered in a rampage,
which is very awesome.
I like the line where he's like, I had a bad night. And it's just like this mass carnage. But anyways, when they throw that one up in the sky, there's almost this point where it seems like they pass through some sort of bubble or atmosphere.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like disappearing into the distance.
Mm-hmm.
But we did also learn that it's a prison.
But it also seemed like Mike had kind of said this last week, but that it was kind of his choice, maybe in a way. Yeah. Because he's like, when I first came here, I thought I was going to love it, and then he's like, but I realized that it's horrible, So what Mike said last week seems to make a little bit more sense. Where also, I think I revised my theory from it being Dr. Manhattan that's keeping him there, and I'm going to change it to Lady True, because Lady True has all those like. She can obviously clone people or make babies. Well, and so...
Yeah. I mentioned last episode that one of my theories is that he's trying to get to Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I still stand by might be a possibility.
Yeah. I still think he will want to kill Dr. Manhattan or something. Just because the whole like killing God stuff was so heavy in that third episode.
Yeah. Interesting.
The other question and the last thing that I have is just, what do you think of the big device that Lady True is building? Like they say it's a clock, and she's like, oh, it's much more than a clock. Is it a time travel machine? Because that's the vibe that I got. Like very simply put, a time travel machine.
It's possible, yeah. So you got to think too, what is it that because William Reeves or Will Reeves is helping her, is it that will make Angela think that he's betrayed her? If it's a time machine, or like maybe he'll go back and make 1921 not happen or something along those lines.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not prepared to speculate on any of that right now.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think like maybe he'll go back in time and like stop the thing, and so that he doesn't lose his parents, and then maybe Angela is no longer born?
I don't think they're going that direction.
I do think that Lady True is kind of the Adrian Veidt of this season. So, she's got some sort of crazy plan. We just got to figure out what that plan is. I did want to... Well, I don't know if this is a spoiler.
Doesn't matter.
We're in spoilers. Yeah, you can do that.
Well, I mean, because it's for next week. But it looks like next week's episode is going to be based around Looking Glass quite a bit. So that is interesting to me.
Yeah.
That is interesting, yeah. That's exactly what the show needs, is like different characters coming into the fray to make the story feel more full.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we can move on.
Thank you, Chris.
Great.
All right, and thank you for listening to our review of, or discussion, I guess, for episode 4 of Watchmen, and thanks for listening to News on the March. Now, let's talk about the Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Okay, so as always with our Criterion films, they're usually older films. They've been out for a while, so we are not going to be doing a spoiler-free section. So if you have not seen The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and you do not want to know anything about the film, pause right now, go watch the film, and then come back and listen to the rest of the episode. This is your spoiler alert right now.
All right, you've gone too far. Spoiler time. After I talk about some stuff. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, directed by Jacques Demy, starring Catherine Deneuve, Nino Castellanuvo, and Anne Vernon. A young woman separated from her lover by war faces a life-altering decision.
Heavy.
That is accurate, yeah. Okay, so guys, I chose this film, and it won. So I guess that means I should probably get us kicked off. What do you say?
I agree.
Do it.
Yeah, so I have been wanting to see this movie for a while now. It's one of those films that seems universally loved by everyone, which I don't know about you, but sometimes that can actually make me put off seeing a movie for longer. Like, the more beloved it is, you know what I mean? Yeah. Does that happen to you guys at all, ever?
To build up the anticipation for it, or to because you don't want to watch it and not like it and not not be on board with everybody, you know?
Well, mainly because I don't want to be disappointed, and I also don't want to be like a wet blanket on here if I show up and don't like it. because I'm not going to lie and give an opinion that I don't feel on here. You know what I mean? Yeah. So anyway, there's just pressure.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There's pressure that comes with those films that are universally loved.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, I will go ahead and just add my voice to the praise of this film. This movie is very charming.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed. I was into it. I got emotional. I was hooked pretty much right away. I don't know of any movies that make me feel this way or that have this kind of vibe. So it's very much like a very unique film. I can't think of anything that even remotely comes close to this. Like every line of dialogue is sung. That's fascinating, you know? I will say I understand this may not be a popular opinion, but I didn't love it. I wasn't floored by it, but it's still quite good. And and I think that its uniqueness to this day is one of the strongest things about it. Like no other movie is going to feel like this movie. So I really liked it. I'm excited to talk more about it, but I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. And I guess we can talk a little bit more about that later. But yeah, solid movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it and recommend it to pretty much anybody. So who wants to go next?
I can go next. The experience of watching this movie, and I'd seen it before, but so Mr. Rogers, when he would have these shows that he called operas, and essentially they would sing the whole episode. And, you know, like Lady Elaine Fairchild would have some thing she had to battle or whatever, but they were just basically, they sung the whole episode. And that was the experience I had here as well. Just charming, fun. At points, this movie gets pretty emotional because of what's happening, and also the song, that main theme song, the love song between the two of them, is very powerful, I think. And yeah, I enjoy the colors in this film. I think the colors are what really make it pop out, because what I enjoy is how it takes, you know, ordinary everyday life and elevates it in a way through colors and song, and mm-hmm. It's a French New Wave musical, essentially, right? And it's a lot of fun. And you know, it's not a 5-star movie for me, but I would not turn down watching this again, you know? So yeah, I really enjoy this movie quite a bit. How about you, Justin?
Well, it was my first time seeing this movie. I don't know, was it you guys' first time as well?
No.
It was mine. Chris said he saw it before.
Yeah, I'd seen it once before.
Okay. Well, it was my first time, and I've been wanting to watch it for a very long time. I actually have the Jacques Demy box set from Criterion, and I've been meaning to crack it open and like really get into it. And this was obviously the one I was always going to start with because it's the most revered. And what's interesting to me is that this movie checks off a lot of boxes for me of a film that I would love. And you guys have mentioned a lot of those. Like, I really love musicals. Like, I love color, French New Wave aesthetic. I really like Catherine Deneuve. She's always great in everything. Was a heavy inspiration for La La Land, which is a film that I love. So, you know, I was really looking forward to it. And in that sense, I think I do find myself a little disappointed in the movie. I do like it, and I think it's good. But I didn't love it, and I didn't find it really good other than some moments. The movie gets away with the singing thing for me because it's in French.
Right, yeah.
I would be concerned about an English remake of this movie being very good.
Well, I think we've already had an English remake, and it's called La La Land.
Yeah, kind of.
It was too similar. Like, I knew everything that was going to happen in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like thematically, I guess. I think I guess like if there was an English remake where they were like, we're going to sing the whole thing just like the original.
Right, I know what you mean.
And because the only other film I can think of that I've seen that did this is the Les Miserables from, what was it, 4 years ago?
Oh, did they sing every word?
Yeah, the like Russell Crowe, Anne Hathaway. Like that.
I never saw it.
That whole film is sung, and it did not work for me. I could not get into it.
Well, I think that has more to do with the movie, I think.
I think so too. Yeah. Like this movie is a significantly better than that one. I guess there's just something about the all singing that leaves me a little detached emotionally, that keeps me from being as invested in it. And I think that's part of what keeps me from loving the film, is that like I could appreciate the things that were happening in the story that were emotional and moving or difficult or charming, but there was this disconnect of not quite being attached to the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that, because I felt the same way. Because like you can't sing every line and have it sound good. You just can't, right? And so like there were many lines that they sang where I was like, ooh, did that sound good? Oh well, they sang it.
So I think that has to do with the French, it being in French too. I found myself actually wanting to know French, like so that I could pick up on rhymes, like and things like that. I thought maybe it would be more clever if I knew French, if that makes sense, in that way. So like also because it's in French, you're like, does that sound good? Like because you're putting the English words with it. I don't know. It's kind of a weird combination.
You learn to like ignore the subtitles. You can't match up that way, but like just listening to it, there's a lot of things that I think are pretty jarring in the movie, like lines, but that's okay. I mean, that's not terrible, but I agree that I think that does keep me at a distance from it. It's more of a novelty. And I think rewatching it, I could probably pay attention to that less, and be more into it. But the first time, just trying to like absorb the music and feel the music, there were several times where I was like, ooh, okay.
Yeah. It's difficult to feel the music and read the English at the same time. And I think that's no fault of the movies, obviously.
Just us, ignorance.
So there is a bit of a challenge, I think, with that too, that I think would get easier, in time. And especially knowing the story, I almost feel like I could just turn subtitles off next time I watch the movie. Yeah. And just and enjoy it more.
That actually did cross my mind, like about halfway through the movie too. I was like, without the English, I know what's happening. Like there's not, plot twists or anything or deeper character moments that I'm going to find. Like you could just turn off the subtitles and kind of listen to it that way. But yeah, there's certainly that French barrier. Like I feel like if I knew French, it would be better.
Yeah. And visually,
or maybe it would be worse.
Yeah, well, that's possible as well.
Very true. Visually, it's stunning. Like I think it's a masterpiece, really.
Yeah, actually, this is the same kind of film, Justin, that we learned about in History of Cinema. That is actually filmed like they film all the reds and then all the greens, and then all the blues, and then kind of put them together. Yeah, and all the colors make the image the full color.
Yeah, it was like 3-strip Technicolor or something.
Yes, it's that kind of technology, and I watched a special feature where they like restored it, and they talked about having to go back to the original negatives to do that.
Wait, so the 3-strip is it can only pick up like green, red, and blue, right?
Right. This was filmed back in the 50s, right? So the color film, it took a long time for color film to like. There was different kinds of color film. They were experimenting for a long time, and different methods would produce different kinds of colors. This very rich pastel was filmed in that manner.
Right. Yeah. So, yeah, you film and it comes out on 3 different strips of film.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Right. I knew about 3-strip films. I didn't know that there's 3 different strips of film, though.
Yeah, and they're each capturing a different range of color.
Yeah. Yeah, one's red. It's like RGB, what we have now with like screens and stuff. There's a red signal, a green signal, and a blue signal, essentially. And when you stack them together or replay them together onto the same screen, I think, however that works, you get the image.
Magic.
And which is kind of amazing to think about.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. Also, we mentioned the singing earlier and how that maybe works sometimes and then other times it doesn't work. I think overall it's very charming, even though sometimes there are lines that don't sound good to me, but that's okay. But they had a really hard time trying to find like a way to do that, singing every single line and not like doing a song, breaking for dialogue, and then another song like traditional musicals. And they said that in order to do it, they had to approach it like a style of jazz singing.
Right. It's very loungy jazz.
Yeah,
sometimes
like talkie singing.
Yeah. Which that's like a type of music that I just enjoy and is very pleasant and charming to me. So, the musical like style of the film, I was really into, and that's another thing that helped it. And it's another thing that I would maybe turn the subtitles off next, and just so I could focus on that, because that I like, and I like the jazz, and I could see how that in particular is a big influence on La La Land.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, there's not much about this movie that's not a huge influence on La La Land.
That's that's a fair point. I could say that after every topic we discuss on it, I'm sure.
Probably, even down to the colors and like the just everything. The handsome jewel thief, not jewel thief, what jewel dealer, whatever he is, jewel thief. Roland, the man that offers her his hand in marriage. That is actually a follow-up from a character in another Jacques Demy movie. He was in a film called Lola. This film, in a sense, is a sequel to a film called Lola, which I have not seen, but I wanted to go ahead and give that a shout out because I thought that was cool.
Yeah, just building a little Jacques Demy cinematic universe. Yeah,
exactly. It's like that one time Michael Keaton was in both Out of Sight and Jackie Brown as the same character in 1997.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I'm curious about his other films now, if there's any of those little connections all through them. And there is a genuine cinematic universe.
I didn't hear about any of them, but I wanted to be sure I mentioned it on the show because next I definitely want to watch Lola. Like that, this movie made me want to watch Lola so I could see the prequel and how Roland ended up here.
I feel like this is part of a love trilogy. I mean, I don't know how connected they are, but I do know someone was like, it's a Jacques Demy romantic trilogy.
I assume the other film is not an all-singing film?
No.
Lola?
I would assume not. It seemed like it was pretty hard for them to put this together.
Yeah.
Based on the interview with the composer, Michel Legrand, there's an interview with him where he talks about basically like everything they did to try to get this thing going. It's very interesting. I suggest if you're at all interested in that process, watch it.
Do you guys think it'd be funny if this Roland character was the only one who sang all of his dialogue in Lola?
He's like, I finally found a town that works for me.
Actually, what would be really awesome? So, like, they never do this. So, like, if somebody goes to a parallel universe, what if they go to a parallel universe where everybody always sings everything? Now, that would be interesting. And a little off topic. And since I'm going to make this awkward segue, so the Jacques Demy love trilogy is Lola, The Bay of Angels, and Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
In that order?
I don't know that there's a particular order, but I do believe that that's the order in which they were released. At least that's what Amazon is telling me.
Yeah, the DCU, the Demy Cinematic Universe.
The JDCU.
It's pretty good.
One of the things I was looking at, so back when Moonlight came out, I remember Paul Thomas Anderson, like he either interviewed the director of Moonlight or was talking about that movie. I don't remember where it was, but he was talking about how he wanted to get Demy close-ups, and that Moonlight accomplished that. And
I think he was talking about Jonathan Demme.
Okay. Well, that was the next thing I was going to say. At the time, I thought it was Jonathan Demme. But then in this movie, there's also close-ups, but these close-ups actually reminded me a little bit more of Moonlight. So I guess which Demme do you think he's talking about? And what did you think of the close-ups?
I mean, I think what Mike said, Jonathan Demme, but only just because close-ups come more to mind with him.
Yeah, well, especially the Silence of the Lambs. But there's like those moments where they're singing into the camera. And so I was like, at the time, I was like, is this who Paul Thomas Anderson is talking about?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's Jonathan Demme, but I think, let's see. Yeah. What Paul Thomas Anderson learned from Jonathan Demme. There's an article in IndieWire from August 7th, 2017.
Talk about close-ups?
I don't know. I'm not going to read it because we're recording a podcast right now. But I assume Jonathan Demme, but hey, who knows?
Seems lazy.
Yeah.
I've also heard him talk about other Criterion films, and like he deep dives into this kind of stuff. So he's definitely a film fan.
Yeah.
I
I
would
bet
hope
he's
so.
seen it, and maybe this influenced his Magnolia singing sequence where everyone sings.
Yeah. So Paul Thomas Anderson, if you're listening, go ahead and let us know which Demme you were talking about. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
I'm pretty sure he does in the interview. I don't think we need to keep talking about this. I'm pretty sure I remember him talking about Jonathan Demme.
It stands as stated. Paul Thomas Anderson, if you're listening, go ahead and write in.
Jonathan Demme, yep. It's Jonathan Demme close-ups, according to IndieWire.
Well, what does IndieWire really know?
Yeah, good thing we went on this rabbit hole.
Well, suffice it to say,
It can be
there
true.
was close-ups in this that reminded me, and I thought that it could have been this Demme that he was talking about. So, what did you think of the close-ups, Mike?
Funny enough, they reminded me of Paul Thomas Anderson.
And Magnolia, and
Yeah.
Moonlight.
I wonder why. I don't know. Yeah, great. No, for real though, this movie's beautiful. The way it's filmed, the camera work, the doll. I think my favorite shot in the whole movie is the shot at the train
Yeah.
when the train's backing up and he gets on it and it just leaves her behind.
Yeah. That's a
Very
great
romantic,
shot.
very beautiful.
What did you guys think of the shot where they're very clearly on something and just being like dollied down the alley and they're
I
not
was like,
walking?
what am I watching? A Spike Lee movie?
I think I read an article where Spike Lee was talking to Barry Jenkins, and
About Jonathan Demme?
yeah,
About Jonathan Demme dollies where people don't walk?
yeah, and then I thought maybe it was Jack Demme. So
Maybe.
I did. I liked it. I mean, it heightens the reality of it. It's definitely they're singing the whole time, and I thought it was interesting. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
This is what I will say.
No,
Yeah, I
it
think
doesn't bother me either.
Yeah, I think it's a really great shot. I think technically I could see some bumps in the dolly track that bothered me, but hey, it's film. What are you going to do? You can't.
Yeah, and 50 years ago, film at that. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I guess I just found myself
It's
thinking, this one section, because it's not like a motif that he revisits throughout the film
No.
or anything like that. So it's just like kind of this one scene. And
isn't that kind of the peak of their love, though? They're like walking home from the opera or floating home from the opera.
yeah, well, they float and then
It's right before they
can-
do it.
Yeah. But then they walk after that, and it's like I could see it almost if it was like, well, we float up to they get to the apartment or get to his house or whatever.
They couldn't make them float upstairs, man.
I know it's difficult.
It's logistics more than anything. They would have floated all the way into that bedroom if they could have.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a stylish film. I'm not going to call it out for just having like occasional random flourishes like that. It's just kind of fun. I'm trying to like apply meaning to it, I guess. And maybe that's a silly endeavor.
I think it keeps it visually interesting, but yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't want to assign meaning to it. I think that kind of thing, though, like that shot, is probably what Damien Chazelle really responded to, because that felt the most La La Land-ish to me. Is because this, even though it has so many similarities between La La Land, because Damien Chazelle was so inspired by this movie, it still is a different kind of musical.
Yeah.
And I think that dolly shot where they're like floating, I think that reminded me the most of a modern musical like La La Land.
Yeah, I think that scene and a lot of the other stuff about the movie has this real sort of charm about cinema, or like a cinematic charm, I guess. Not necessarily like the characters or whatever, but there's a bit of, you can feel like the love of the filmmaking and the love of cinema within it. And that's, probably one of the things that makes this such a revered movie. I think that if I saw this was playing in a theater, I would be a lot more inclined to revisit again.
Oh man.
Because I think there would be something about seeing it in a dark theater on the big screen that would
the
elevate
sweeping score.
Yeah, it would elevate this film, I think, more than you can get watching on your TV at home on your couch.
Totally agree.
Yeah, the colors, the sound, the score, everything. You want it to be, I agree. Like, the more into it you are, like, the bigger the screen, the louder the speakers that you're listening to it in, and the least amount of interruptions possible are going to get you like on this movie's wavelength.
Yeah. I don't know that I can think of a movie, maybe 2001 when I saw that on the big screen, like a movie that I think would be more enhanced by actually seeing it in a cinema than this movie.
Yeah. Good call. 2001 was a good example. That movie was amazing in IMAX.
Yeah.
And a musical almost to itself, like there's not necessarily people singing, but yeah.
Yeah, the last thing that I want to talk about, I guess, is just the ending scene. We go through the movie. She's pregnant. She needs to figure out what to do. Oh, I did want to ask, do you guys think that her mom is hiding his letters and not giving them to her? Or do you think there's some other circumstances? Because they separately talk about how they're writing letters and not hearing from the other person.
Well, when he comes back and he's talking to, I forget the old lady that's taking care of him, that leaves him everything. But when Guy comes back, he talks about how she was writing him and how she seemed so much different in her letters. Like he could tell things were different.
Yeah. I think it occurred to me that she would be, like that was the thing she could do is, hide those letters. But I think it was just the impatience of the girl to get those letters that was really the issue. Yeah. And I don't think she ever hit him because when Guy talks about it later, he's saying, like they it feels like they were corresponding pretty regularly. And there's a definitive moment where she grows cold, essentially.
Yeah. That's definitely how I took it. In fact, there's even the scene where she gives her one of his letters.
Yeah.
And they have a whole scene where they like talk about it, and she even has like the picture of him that she looks at and when she's writing it, and then she starts to think about how she looks at the picture more than she like actually thinks about him. So she's thinking about a photograph more than she's thinking about a man, and it's just about her being young and impatient.
Okay. Well, I knew that there's this thing where she's talking about the silence, and the thing that I guess I cued in on was he says something to the effect of, she would write me back, but she stopped answering my questions.
Right.
And I guess I took that as she's continuing to write him, but thinking that he's not writing her and she's not getting his letters. So she's not answering the questions anymore. She's still writing him.
Oh.
And he feels cold because she's not actually responding to the letters that he got.
Oh, wow.
That's
no,
complicated.
I didn't take that.
But yeah.
And that coupled with her talking about the silence and stuff, like I didn't know if that was like an undertone that we were supposed to pick up on.
I don't believe so. I think it's a more powerful story that she just made a decision.
Yeah, and I think if the mom stops giving her the letters, that turns her into Cruella de Vil, or some...
That's too much plot.
Yeah, and but it also makes her much more of a villain. Like she's the antagonist in this, I think, but it makes her a cartoon.
Yeah, but part of the beauty of this movie is the simplicity of it. It's like the Bicycle Thieves of musicals.
Yeah, they need to be real people, I think, as opposed to.
It needs to be not convoluted. That's the the simpler the better, basically, and that's too much. Like that's too villainous. That's. Part of like the classiness of this movie is its simplicity. It's a simple tale about growing up and growing apart. And I think the more of those kind of elements you throw in there, the less responsive I am to it personally.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it. Because that's what I picked up from it. I'm not convinced that that's not the case, or at least that it's not there to see it if you're paying attention or if you want to. Just because the mom was so into the idea, and she was the real driving force behind like, you need to marry this guy. And
well, it's because she was she needed money.
And I could see her realizing that as long as Catherine Deneuve, Genevieve, is into him, and getting the letters, that she isn't going to give up hope about him coming back. I could see that playing out. Yes, it's melodramatic, but this being the movie that it is, I guess I didn't put, melodrama being above it.
I think this movie's melodramatic. I just think that makes her I mean, and I didn't see it, so I haven't lived with that idea of it, but I feel like that makes her more of a cartoon villain as opposed to a real person, which, with the French New Wave and all that stuff, that's what made me, like, feels like this is a real thing that could happen. It's just that everybody's singing, right? But when the mom starts stealing the letters, I don't know, it feels more heightened and a little bit more unrealistic to me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. But okay, so they don't end up together. They end up marrying different people. And I think the part of the movie that I was into the most, or where I was like, oh, wow, this is like intense, this is heavy, was like the ending gas station scene. And particularly the part where he goes out and he sees the girl in the car window. And, you know, obviously he knows it's his daughter. And he just like, he doesn't even say anything to her, which I think is like the thing that really moved me.
That he doesn't say anything to his daughter?
Yeah. Like he doesn't interact with her really.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how could you explain that situation to her? It would just confuse her.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of the right thing. It's just like,
it sucks.
It's it's tough to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty of this movie, right? Like that's such one of the classic great endings, because, you know, everyone has that, like the road not taken. There's like that scene in the movie where she's talking about, she's like, there was a time whenever like I thought I couldn't live without him. Why aren't I dead?
Yeah.
So I think that's very much something that everyone can respond to. It's very much a human thing, is like we're always in the moment. We're always trying to plan out the perfect future, but no one knows what the future holds. No one does. You know, it's completely up in the air, and it could change at the drop of a hat. And all of a sudden you're taking a different road before you even realize you're taking a different road. And then you're old, you know, it sucks because, you know, from her perspective, I get why she would do what she did. You know what I mean? Like she couldn't wait 2 years. It's not that long. She, you know, the argument could be made like, why did she do this? You know, like why, but in her situation at that time period, being knocked up like that and having such a well-to-do man willing to accept that situation, I mean, that's a lottery ticket right there, you know?
And, I mean, you have this high-pressure mother that is just constantly...
who needs that money,
and infrequent letters from, the father is probably an issue, too, you know, like, every once in a while. And the mom is, I guess, like, planting ideas like, oh, he's with other women, you know, like, and stuff like that. So... yeah, I mean, what I will...
2 years when you're 17 years old is a very, very long time.
Well, that's for sure.
Yeah.
2 years now doesn't seem like very long, but like the older you get, the less 2 years seems like. But man, the younger you are, do you remember what a year used to feel like when you were in like high school?
Yeah, just 6 months at that. You know, like a school year is not, 9 months is forever.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about the ending, but I did want to ask, so she makes this decision. In the church, she does not seem very happy, and we don't really see her again until the gas station. Do you think that she has a happy life, or like happy? Like, is she just like a housewife, you know, that's got a lot of money and doesn't have to worry about those things, you know?
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's like, is anyone ever completely happy with where they're at? You know what I mean? I think it's one of those.
Okay, yeah.
She probably hasn't thought about him in a while. But she always will every now and then, you know, and then seeing him drives an emotional response in her. But I think that's human nature, right? Like you accept where you're at and you move forward. You have to move forward. Like looking back does nothing, but we all do it, you know? Mm-hmm. I think she's happy because she's healthy. Her kid is healthy and she's well-to-do. But yeah, it doesn't mean she doesn't care.
Yeah.
I think it's just the bittersweet. It's about being bittersweet, you know? Nothing's ever one way or the other. It's always... There's always a little sadness, no matter what road you take.
Really heartbreaking that they both named their kid Francois, or bittersweet, I guess, is the answer there. You know, and of course she wanted a daughter and he wanted a son, and they both named him Francois. And I just thought that was really touching. And there's that moment, like, too, where she's sitting in the car. I think they're saying goodbye, and he just has this look of coldness on his face, like, where he just walks away from it, you know, and that's kind of, I think, because he sees it in a different way too, or at least she just like left him, you know. He was surprised about it as anybody else, but there's like that moment where they could continue talking, and it looks like she wants to continue talking, and he just cuts it off and kind of walks away or something along those lines.
I don't know if I picked up on that she wanted to keep talking, but that's interesting. Is that what you got, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that things end up with him, you know, she kind of got the silence from him and had no choice in her mind but to like move on. Whereas like from his perspective, she just chose someone else and like was impatient and couldn't wait. Right. And neither of them get that closure. And I think that kind of colors my view of it a little bit, where I can see how she would, you know, maybe want to hear more from him, but he would be, you know, not that interested in talking to her.
I would have liked a scene where she's like, oh, you own this place? You know, like,
yeah,
I would have liked a scene where she realizes that maybe he wasn't like, yeah, he's not going to be as rich as she is, but like he wasn't a bum. Yeah. You know, he owns a business. Like, that would have been nice, but oh well.
That's where the French New Wave of this comes in. Because there's, like, we get this musical. Any other musical, they'd talk it out, or they'd fight, or they'd, like, try to figure something out at the end, you know? Like, there's more to that scene, but that's not real life. Even though they're singing in this, it still mirrors real life in such a way, like Tokyo Story, you know? Like, that last scene shows you a part of humanity that you don't often see on screen, you know, like, and
well, yeah. What is talking about it really going to get?
No, you're right. I'm not like,
I mean, that's the realism part.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like, what are they going to do? Mess up their respective marriages? That wouldn't be good of them to do.
Right. Well, they could say stuff like, oh, you did get your gas station. And like, what are you up to? Did you get what, you know, like, how's your mother? I guess they did say, how's your mother? And she had just recently passed. But yeah, like, there's just like this little minute scene, and I don't know, I really like that. I like how that ends. I remember the first time I watched this, like, kind of being blown away by the ending, and like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's boldly bittersweet.
Yeah, and it's the kind of ending that I really like, you know? And the rest of the vibe of this movie might give off the impression that there might be a happy ending, at least like when you start the film.
Oh, right.
Well, the fact that it's a musical.
Yeah. There's just it's somewhat of an expectation with the musical format. Yeah. And so to have it end in this place, I think is really effective. And it's really the thing that pushed me into liking the movie quite a bit, you know? Like, I don't love it, but there was definitely a jump up in terms of like my thoughts on the film after that ending scene. Because prior to is like, I'm enjoying it and I like it, but you know, I'm not super into it and loving everything I'm seeing. And that end scene kicked it up a notch for me.
For sure.
Does anybody have anything else they want to say about The Umbrellas of Cherbourg?
No, it's quite good. I recommend it to anyone and everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. It's a good date night film.
Absolutely.
Best good first date film.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, I think since we are done with the discussion, it is closed. You've reached the end. It is time to move into our brief next section where we talk about the next theme and choose the next options for the Casually Criterion poll.
Yeah, let's do it.
I had to think of my words.
That's all right. So this week's theme is going to be based around the film that we're covering next week, which is The Lighthouse. And this theme would be claustrophobia or claustrophobic films.
Yeah. So these are films from the Criterion collection that give you the feeling of claustrophobia when you're watching them. That could be any genre.
Chris, you can't choose Punch Drunk Love again. I don't care how you spin it.
I just want to see it again, guys.
He's like, well, his suit, you know, I mean, it's really tight.
A lot of it takes place. I mean,
have you ever worn a tie? It makes you feel really like it's tight.
He's in his office, and man, that is claustrophobic. Everything's like, now I'm going to pick it just because you guys made fun of me. But like,
way to go, Justin.
All that noise is happening, and there is some claustrophobic stuff going on in that movie.
I know, but you've already chosen it, and we've already reviewed it.
I bet you I would win again, too, if I chose it.
Probably
would.
I'm giving the people what they want.
Chris, what movie did you choose that wasn't Punch Drunk Love?
A film by a non-controversial director, Roman Polanski called Knife in the Water. Have you guys seen this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but I have seen it.
It's a claustrophobic
Yeah,
movie.
for sure. I really enjoy this movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but most of it takes place on a boat of some kind, and I guess a sailboat. It's not a boat of some kind. I know what kind of boat it is. But they pick up a random...
It's a floating device of some sort.
They pick up a random stranger, and things get weird. I liked it a lot at the time.
Yeah, me too.
That is not the claustrophobic Roman Polanski film I thought you were going to go with.
I know. I wonder if mine will be, because mine is also a Roman Polanski film.
Oh.
What is it, Mike?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I honestly, I just thought of another one that I might want to change it to. I'm trying to decide right now. Justin, pick a number between 1 and 10.
Oh, wow. 8.
Okay. My film is Repulsion.
Yes, that's the one I thought Chris was going to say at first.
I was thinking about possibly Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, I think Repulsion is a little bit more on the claustrophobic theme.
Oh, definitely. That's why, I added it the last minute. So yeah, Repulsion. The movie about a woman having a nervous breakdown. And I think she has schizophrenia. I can't remember what she has, but it's a good movie.
It is a good movie. I'm a big fan of it. It also stars Catherine Deneuve.
Nice.
Which is
on theme.
Good. Yeah. Very on theme.
All right, so that is my film. Justin, what film did you choose?
Well, I'm going to choose a not Roman Polanski film.
What? Oh, no.
And this is actually the first one that came to mind, so I was surprised that neither of you guys named it, but I'm going to go with 12 Angry Men.
Oh, nice. I forgot that was on Criterion, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
Just recently, too.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably been 4 years or so. But
that's probably the easier one to talk about in 2019.
Yeah.
That wasn't directed by Roman Polanski.
That's true. We don't have to caveat anything with that one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
We just talk about it guilt-free.
That's right. Well, 12 Angry Men is about a dozen men who are angry. And they're in
a dozen men that are angry.
A jury's office.
That's the IMDb synopsis.
A dozen men that are angry. I don't know why that makes me laugh, but it's just funny.
Good. Well, maybe that's all I should just leave it there. It's about a dozen men who are angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's about jurors trying to reach a verdict in a murder case. And a lot of the movie takes place in the room. Almost all of the movie takes place in there, in the jurors' room where they're deliberating. So very much a claustrophobic film in that sense. All right. So to recap, Chris chose A Knife in the Water from Roman Polanski. Mike chose Repulsion from Roman Polanski. And I chose 12 Angry Men from Sidney Lumet.
May the best film win. Or the most claustrophobic film win. I don't really
12
know.
12 Angry Men is the one that's going to win.
I hope so, honestly. I've only seen the movie once.
Yeah, I'm a big Repulsion fan. I think it's really great. I'm not as big of a Knife in the Water fan, but I have only seen it once. But Chris, as per usual, going with the undersung, obscure
champion
film. Yeah, the dark horse. So if you want to go vote, by the time you're listening to us, that poll will be up on our Twitter account. You can find us at Casual Cinecast. So go check it out and vote and help us pick our film.
Yeah, please and thank you.
Awesome. So that does it for this episode then, right?
It does.
Sure does.
Yay.
Yeah. We talked about a lot. We covered a lot of ground.
We
I'm proud
are,
of us.
at least according to the time on my thing, roughly have been recording for about the same length that Umbrellas of Cherbourg is.
I bet with some editing, this will be much shorter.
Yeah, it'll probably be less than that. But
it's actually going to be longer.
Oh, no.
add in more pauses.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We should really make it Irishman length
There you go.
instead of
We
Umbrellas
should try
of
to
Cherbourg.
do our podcast about that one, our review for that one. We should try to make it longer than the movie.
I'll have to take the day off work.
No, that's a challenge. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, as always, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
All right, we will see you next week. Stay tuned to this feed. We will be doing a review of Robert Eggers' new film, The Lighthouse, starring Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe.
That's just a preview.
Chris farted.
That was a preview of the movie, if you haven't seen it
From
yet.
Chris's butt.
And that's right. If you want to send us some questions to answer about The Lighthouse, you can send those to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinecast, or you can email those to casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We will see you next time.
Au revoir.
Ah, damn it. I was going to say au revoir. You son of a bitch.
Thank you.